I'm a program coordinator with the City of Toronto in the Smart Commute Toronto program. So today we've got a webinar for you. It's titled Taking Remote Work to the Next Level. This is the fourth and final of the Smart Commute program's Return to Office webinar series. The Smart Commute Return to Office campaign is designed to help Toronto employers and employees plan for a safe return to office. Through our website, smartcommuteToronto.ca, we're offering free resources that support the return to office and other commuter resources. So we'll start today's webinar with a land acknowledgement to respect the land that we walk, cycle, and take public transit on. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on today is traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. So for anyone interested, we'll be recording this webinar so you can view it at a later date at your convenience, or if there's any information that you want to circle back to. Those that have registered today will be sent a link to that recording, and we'll also be posting it on the Live Green Toronto's YouTube page for easy access. So Smart Commute works with Toronto businesses to reduce traffic congestion and greenhouse gas emissions. We offer tools and support to make it easier to carpool, cycle, walk, and take public transit. 36% of greenhouse gas emissions in Toronto are generated through transportation, with the majority of this coming from personal vehicles. So Smart Commute works towards the ambitious goals of Toronto's climate action strategy, Transform TO. You can learn more about that through the City of Toronto's website. So throughout this presentation, I would encourage anyone with questions to use the Q&A box, which should be located to the right of your screen. You'll notice we won't kind of answer these directly as they come up, but towards the end of the presentation, we'll try to go through as many questions as we have time for. So with that, I'm pleased to hand over the screen to our speaker today, Dorinda. Dorinda is the Executive Director of Point A, and works very closely with us. And I know she's got a lot of great information for you here today. So with that, I'll hand over the mic.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sanjay, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And we're really excited about this topic because we know most of us have been working remotely for quite some time now. And we're really hoping that some of the ideas that we're presenting today will help you take your experience to the next level. And as Sanjay mentioned, the Smart Commute Toronto team, our goals are really simple. We really want to reduce traffic congestion and related GHG emissions across the city. And to do that, we connect workplaces and commuters with sustainable commute options. And as part of the return to office work that we've been doing, we have a number of free downloadable resources that you can find at smartcommuteToronto.ca. And this is part of the City of Toronto's Transform TO Climate Action Strategy, which we're going to be talking about a little bit later. As we were developing this webinar, we really wanted to address some of the concerns that many of you may have when it comes to remote work. Maybe it's been working really well for you, but we also know that some things have come up. And what's really interesting is that when we take the perspective of commuting, we can actually address some of these concerns. So we're going to be looking at two specific questions today. The first is, how do we bring the best of commuting into the remote work environment? And the second is, how can the perspective of commuting improve productivity? In terms of the first question, I know you're probably thinking, Dorinda, I really liked my commute now because it's a 15-second commute from my bedroom to my kitchen or my living room. And I don't really know if there were any great things about my pre-pandemic commute. Well, there actually are a few things that I might remind you of, including some of the health benefits, the social connections. We'll touch a bit on the environmental benefits, and then how we can also support the local economy. In terms of the health benefits of commuting, an active commute can actually increase productivity by 52%. So just by doing anything other than driving alone, you actually can improve your own productivity at work. And that also results in a 32% reduction in the number of sick days that you take. Also, those who take public transit are exposed to less pollution than driving. And so just by an active commute, you're already doing not only reaping some benefits, the physical benefits of a healthier body, but also bringing those benefits right into your work. The other aspect of health benefits is actually related more to mental health. And so if you think back to your experience of sitting on a train or a bus, even if it's just for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, that was kind of your time, right? It was your time to nap, maybe read a book, text. And actually, by doing this, we're creating psychological, physical, and behavioral boundaries between work and home life. And this is part of something we call boundary theory. And of course, as we know, with remote work, we don't really have that because you might be working from your kitchen table and work and home life are occurring at the same place. And when we have a commute, it actually helps to prevent what we call role spillover. So none of us probably want to parent our manager or treat our partners like we do our employees. But this can happen sometimes if we are working and living in the same space. So what can we do? Well, I'd like to introduce to you a concept called the fake commute. You may have already heard about this. This was introduced last year in the pandemic, and it really is about taking a portion of your day to introduce some more physical activity into your life. This is what I do. So at 5 o'clock, I like to move away from my computer and maybe do 30 minutes of exercise. That's my big commute. And then I'll start dinner. And commutes are actually very powerful rituals in our lives and helps create that boundary between work life and home life. And it tells our bodies and minds, okay, it's time to stop working. So you can try to do this whether it's at 5 o'clock or maybe before you work or even at noon. Of course, I know there's many of you are saying that seems really hard because finding 30 minutes might be a difficult thing to do. Well, there's something that was introduced last year called the Canadian 24-hour movement guidelines. And this is a set of guidelines that builds off of what we always hear, the 150 minutes of physical activity a week that we're supposed to be doing. Well, what does this look like every day? Because it might be hard to plan the week, but maybe we can consider small ways we can take every day to introduce more movement into our lives. So in addition to getting good quality sleep, we should consider breaking up periods of sitting, whether that's by standing for maybe 20 minutes, stretching, doing some HIIT physical activity, or really anything else that gets us moving on a regular basis. These are small ways that we can actually benefit from some of the health benefits of commuting. On to the social benefits of commuting. So studies have shown that an active commute can increase trust, which is a critical component of social capital. And I know you're thinking, what is social capital? Well, according to the World Bank, social capital is the glue that holds our societies and economies together. And this is because trust is a vital component of social capital. So when you go to buy something, you have to trust that the seller is going to ship your product and that whoever's delivering your product is actually going to deliver it to you on time. And when we look at the commuting experience, a Swedish study conducted in 2015 found that those who drove to and from work actually experienced lower levels of trust and lower levels of social capital. The reason for this is in order to promote trust, we need face-to-face interaction. So when you're driving, you can't be focusing on other drivers. You have to be focusing on the road. But when you're cycling, you're walking, you're taking public transit, you're looking at people, whether you're interacting with them or not. And this is actually really important to combat the isolation that many of us may be experiencing when working from home. Even if you are working in a busy home, It's not the same as seeing your coworkers on a screen. We all know this. Or seeing different people maybe we've never met on a regular basis. And so by having an active commute, perhaps within your fake commute, you actually can reap some of the social benefits of commuting. I'm going to also maybe ask you to do an experiment. And this experiment was actually conducted by Professor Nicholas Epley. He's a professor at the University of Chicago. And he conducted this experiment in Chicago as well as in London, England. And he basically asked people when taking public transit on their commutes to talk to people, to strangers specifically. And I know what you're probably thinking, because these individuals thought the same thing. This is not going to make my commute great. I don't think it's going to help at all. And the reason for this was actually because we often underestimate the positive benefits of interactions with other people, and also the benefits and the positive perspective that people have of us. And so the individuals that underwent this experiment actually came out and said, I really enjoyed talking to strangers. And so maybe you're going about your everyday life, maybe you're at the grocery store, or you're maybe walking down the street. Maybe say hi to somebody and see how that makes you feel. The other thing you can do is create a walking or cycling group with coworkers who live in your area. And you can actually do this by using the Smart Commute tool we have at smartcommute.ca. There's also an app version of it. We can also, at the Smart Commute Toronto team, help you with this. And this just gets you out and about, hopefully in an active way, and connecting with your coworkers, which helps to reduce some of the isolation that you may be feeling. I want to touch a little bit about minimizing environmental impacts. We know that remote work is very sustainable because heating a home office is actually requires less energy than heating an office building. And that's great. But what about the rest of the time? Maybe the trips that we're taking are maybe done by car. And so I'd like to give you a preview of something that is actually going to be introduced at Toronto City Council next week. And we hope it will get approved. It's a Transform TO Net Zero strategy. And this is a revision to the original Transform TO strategy, which aimed to achieve net zero by 2050. This new strategy has an even more ambitious goal of achieving net zero by 2040. So how can you help with achieving net zero? Transform TO suggests that 75% of all trips within 5 kilometers should be done by walking, cycling, or done on public transit. So it's something to consider as you're going about your regular everyday life. Can you do most of your trips in an active manner? When it comes to commuting, one of the things in terms of sustainability is trip chaining. So what does this mean? Well, when I used to take transit to and from work, I would often go to a store, pick up something, then get on a train. And then on my walk home, I might go to the grocery store or the drugstore to pick up some other things. And we know that during the pandemic, small businesses have been disproportionately affected by the impact of lockdowns and the lack of commuting. And so something to consider on your trips outside of your work, perhaps on that fake commute, is how you can trip chain, whether you are doing that actively, or I recognize that many of you may have to drive depending on where you live in the city. And so by chaining your trips together or the errands you have, you're a lot more productive, you get things done, but it also helps to reduce the GHG emissions while also supporting our local economy. Putting this all together, how can we actually benefit from all the things I just discussed? I'm going to give you 3 ways. The first is really simple. Grab lunch with a coworker and make sure you walk, cycle, or take public transit to that restaurant. You're supporting a local business, you're getting that social time in, and you're being active. The second is, if you have children, and you bring them to school every day, maybe once a week or a few times a week, get together with other parents who are also going to the same school to drop off their children and walk together. And maybe on the way back, go grab a cup of coffee, go to the store together. That's a second way. The last way is what we call proximate commuting, which is simply just working outside of your home at a local restaurant or a cafe. Maybe that's a great opportunity to talk to a stranger. It's a way to support a local business, and hopefully it's an active trip to get there. The next question is one we want to tackle because we hear this all the time. Productivity, productivity, productivity. And we know that it's not always easy to be productive while working from home, especially when home and work life are in the same space. So let's consider how the perspective of commuting can actually address or improve productivity. I always like to start off with definitions because we talk about productivity, but what is it? Paul Krugman, who is a Nobel Prize winner in economics, has a very famous quote that says, "Productivity isn't everything, but in the long run, it's almost everything." A country's ability to improve its standard of living over time depends almost entirely on its ability to raise its output per worker. And what this means is that productivity is essentially the output per worker. It means if we do what we call knowledge work, sit at a computer, it means that whatever we put out there for our company, the value of that output exceeds that of what your company is paying you and whatever costs go into producing that particular output. And so productivity is essentially about working, but hopefully working more effectively and efficiently. It's important to note, though, that there is a cost to productivity, and a relentless pursuit of being productive all the time has actually caused some not so great effects. According to Statistics Canada, between February and October 2020, almost 21,000 women left the labor force in Canada. This represents 64% of those who left the labor force. On the other hand, 68,000 men joined the labor force. Now, there's many reasons for this, and I'm also speaking from a cisgender perspective, but in many heterosexual parental relationships, often the caregiving responsibilities are primarily on the woman, and therefore it becomes very hard to work while homeschool or caregive at the same time. And this has actually resulted in these numbers that you're seeing now. All that is to say, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because when we are working remotely, while there's so many benefits, we also need to consider the lived experiences of those who are actually working from home. And many of those lived experiences may not even be captured in these statistics. So what do we do? Whether you want to bring up some of these ideas to your manager, or if you are a manager, these are some ways that maybe you can consider implementing that takes on the perspective of commuting to improve the experience of working remotely. So the first one you see there is 5 to 10 minutes. Essentially, this means that if you have an hour-long meeting, to instead of have a 60-minute meeting, to consider a 55-minute meeting or a 50-minute meeting. Having that gap in between is kind of like the time when we used to walk from meeting room to meeting room when we were in office. And this gives people the opportunity to stretch, have a hygiene break, maybe caregive, whatever it is that we need to do for 5 to 10 minutes in between meetings. The other one here is audio versus over video. So if you want to have a fake commute, maybe an opportunity to do that would be to take your calls while going for a walk or a run. But we can't do this if we're always required to be on video. This is also really important because depending on the living conditions of different individuals or their lived experiences, it may be easier to just have audio as opposed to video. So it's just as simple as saying, giving people the option to not be on video can actually significantly help. The third is to reduce the number of meetings. It used to be that we had travel time between meetings, and maybe it wasn't realistic for us to have 7 meetings a day. But now, because there's almost no time and everything is virtual, we can have as many meetings as we possibly want. And that may not necessarily be a great thing. So by introducing this concept of, or looking at things from the perspective of commuting, we maybe can consider reducing the number of meetings that we have. The fourth is to consider implementing core hours. And this is something that as an organization, we've had for many years. And this introduces a level of flexibility to an employee's life when they're working remotely, or also when they're working in office. And we introduce this because we know that many people don't like to commute during rush hours. And so by saying that, okay, we're all going to be in the office between 10 and 3:30, that happens to be our hours, you can choose your core hours. That means that we have meetings only during this time, and it allows people to come to the office before 10 a.m. and basically be in the office until 3:30, and that's when maybe the earliest person can leave. And the flexibility is so important and allows anyone who's working from home to take care of children or to do anything that they need to do, recognizing that there's only a certain amount of time that they have to be actively at their desk. The last two is really about communication. I think that we sometimes assume that anyone is just going to tell us what their needs are, like, okay, this is what I need. But that's not always the case. And I think it's important, whether you are managing a team or not, to have times to speak to other people to say, how can we support you in your remote work experience? And so just asking, having these conversations can really improve the experience, and hopefully more people will continue to reap the benefits of remote work. The other two things I want to mention is shopping locally as we enter the holiday season. If you are giving any presents to your employees to perhaps support some local businesses, we also have a really awesome bike share discount. And so employers can take advantage of this. You just sign up and you can get all the information at smartcommutetoronto.ca. And by signing up, you get 25% off annual memberships for any of your employees. So it's a really great way of supporting employees in their active commutes, fake or otherwise. A big question I always get is, well, how do I measure productivity? How do I measure success? Because we want to make sure that whatever we're doing is actually leading to a more productive team environment. Many of you might have already heard of PDCA. This is something that I learned about many years ago. And it starts with plan. So starting to speak to your team and thinking about what are some small ways that we can introduce this idea of commuting to improve our productivity. Maybe it's these 55-minute meetings or 50-minute meetings. The do is starting small, maybe picking only one or two things, and then the check part is measuring to see how they have worked out. This could be in actual numbers. So someone can say, yeah, I was able to spend an extra 30 minutes of my day to do whatever it is instead of being in a meeting. But it could also be stories, qualitative evidence of someone saying, I feel less tired because of this, or I feel more productive because of this. All of these matter, and they help reinforce the effectiveness of whatever it is that you are doing. And then finally is the act part. So that's where you can implement it permanently and then repeat the cycle. Look at other ways of how you can improve the productivity of your team, taking into consideration their lived experiences and doing this over time. Something that you can also consider is, I mentioned this before, it's the Smart Commute tool. There's an app version of it, and you can also use the web version at smartcommute.ca. It's free, And it's a great way to track your commutes. Again, I put that in quotes because it could be actual commutes or anything you do as a fake commute. It can also track the financial benefits of remote work. And if you have questions, definitely reach out to our team and we can help you with setting this up at your workplace. I'd like to also remind everyone that we have free downloadable resources. Because we're talking about remote work, I understand that many of us may be returning to the office, if not already. And so we have developed a series of resources specifically related to hybrid remote work. We've got a really awesome guide as well as the deck that you can download for free at smartcommutetoronto.ca. So with that, this is now your time. It's probably my favorite time because I'd love to hear more from you. If you have any questions, we have plenty of time where we can answer them. And Sanjay is going to be reading them out. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the Q&A. Thanks so much.
Fantastic. That was amazing. Thank you so much for all that incredible information, Dorinda. We've got a few questions that have trickled in throughout the presentation, so I will start reading them out. And please, if anything comes to mind from our viewers, just type them into the Q&A box and hopefully we'll get them answered for you. All right, so the first question is, in addition to the fake commutes, do you have any tips for promoting active lifestyles in lieu of the actual commutes?
Yeah, I think this one is tough because I recognize that for a lot of people, it might be really hard to do this, especially during a weekday. Like fake commutes are great, but time might be really difficult. So I would say starting maybe on a weekend would be really great. So if you are interested in perhaps cycling, you've never done it before, that's a really great time to start. Bring some friends or bring your family along to go try that out with you. The other thing is, even if it's small things, like we talked about that trip chaining, so perhaps trying that out, maybe figuring out in your neighborhood, okay, where are the new places? Like I have to pick up dry cleaning or go to the drugstore, go to the grocery store, rediscovering your neighborhood and walking to those places could be a really great thing to do. Or even if it's like I'm going grocery shopping, maybe if you get everything delivered, consider going to pick that up instead. So these are very small ways that you can introduce more activity and physical activity while also making sure that you're addressing some of the errands or the things that you got to do in your everyday life. I think those are some small ways that you can get some physical activity in if you don't necessarily want to do the fake commute or have time to do it.
Fantastic. Yep.
And
Excellent.
Sanjay, if you have some tips, I also welcome them too, by the way. Because Sanjay is also on the team, and so he might have some awesome things to say. So feel free to jump in if you want to offer some advice.
Fantastic. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, so I will read off the next question for you. So does does the Smart Commute program offer resources for me to help support the culture in my workplace around cycling and walking?
Yeah, the Smart Commute program is really awesome. It's customized to each individual workplace, and so it's something that if you are interested, definitely check out the website and you can find out more to speak to someone on the team. And the program is designed so that we are promoting active commuting, whether that's cycling, walking, taking public transit, but we're also there to support people who do drive. So carpooling is a big part of that. And that really is, I think, often the key. Like we find that people are often like, I don't know how to do this. And so we might provide resources and knowledge. We have campaigns throughout the year that often have prizes attached to it. Who doesn't want a prize? That encourage you to try out different ways of commuting. And together, I think that when you're able to do this with other coworkers, this can also really help with addressing some of the challenges of maybe not having an active travel culture within your workplace.
Yeah, definitely. And a thing I'll add just from my own experience is that just talking to people in your workplace that already do a lot of these things, I find very helpful. Just to like break down that barrier and just get some kind of inside tips and tricks and stuff from people. Um,
Yeah,
it's
even
quite
things like
helpful.
where do I store my bike? Like where do I lock that up? I don't know. Or even addressing concerns. I find sometimes it's like, I don't know, like this seems new to me or really hard. We might not want to like say those publicly, but having conversations with other people can actually really help alleviate some of those concerns.
Definitely. Okay. And I'll just circle back on this. We've talked a lot about Smart Commute and kind of what the program has to offer. Um, People might be wondering, how do you get involved in this? Is there any information you can give them about that, Brenda?
Yeah, the Smart Commute program, definitely check out smartcommute .ca, and you actually what you do is you just find out where your if your workplace is located downtown, then you connect with the Smart Commute Toronto team, and all the contact information is there. So if you are interested, we would love for you to join. And so you can just hop on the website and connect with one of us. And we have a number of delivery partners across the entire city. And we'd be more than happy with, with talking with you and introducing the Smart Commute program to your workplace.
Fantastic. All right. So I've just got another one or two questions here for you. I think a lot of people have experienced this. So, like so many other employers, my office started teleworking with the pandemic. Can you provide any tips on how I can show the value of this teleworking to my employer? I think a lot of people are concerned that this might no longer be an option as we start transitioning out of our stay-at-home orders and all those kind of things that were associated with the pandemic. So again, yeah, any tips on how you might be able to talk to your employers about continuing working in some form or another?
Yeah, I think this is definitely a big concern because as much as we talked about addressing some of the issues that can come up with remote work, we do recognize that there are a lot of benefits and many people are really looking forward to continuing some level of remote work. So I would say that pre-pandemic, a lot of offices actually had some level of hybrid work, even if it's like working from home, like when you're sick. That might be something that you might have, whether informally or formally as a policy. And so maybe going back and bringing that back up, saying, before this, we had this opportunity, right? Where if you were, in employment or whatnot, you could work from home for the day. And so maybe starting small, if the requirement is to go back in person for 5 days a week, saying, is there any way that we can actually introduce 1 day a week where I work from home? And I know that sometimes we don't want to share the reasons. So depending on your relationship with your manager, you may or may not want to say that. But I find that employers are much more amenable to the conversation if it is something that's based on precedent or something small. As we know, a pilot is really great. We really like those. And so that could be a small way of reintroducing this concept. And then also, talking to other coworkers and seeing, are other people feeling the same way? Because that could also be not just yourself, you could be speaking for a number of other people and making the case for it. I do think that some of the things I mentioned around measurement, so whether that's actually a quantitative metric or even a qualitative one, your stories, those help because it provides evidence of why this is the case. Building the business case for working from home, especially now, can seem difficult, but I think it's totally doable. And I think if you are part of the Smart Commute program, we could definitely help you with some things to consider as part of that as well. But maybe, again, starting small would hopefully be helpful. And then hopefully that can be increased. At the very least, getting some sort of hybrid remote work, that would be really good, or even flexible hours. I know for a lot of people that helps too, not just strictly to 9 to 5. So I do think that it requires a level of sometimes negotiation and speaking to your manager. I know it's not always easy, but I think those are hopefully some ways that you can still get some remote work time.
That's great. Yeah. And again, you mentioned the idea of a a pilot. I think that's an excellent way to approach it. Um, you can always start small, and once you prove that it works and everyone is, as effective as they were, if not more, which we've seen in a lot of cases, um, that's a great way to kind of open that avenue and start walking down that road.
Yeah, and I think asking what is it about the in-office setting that's really important to management? Really understanding that. I don't know if you're able to get that information because most of the time what we talk about is like, oh, collaboration is really important. And certainly we're hearing that a lot. We want to make sure like everyone's like, well, we want to make sure that people are connecting. It's important for all of these reasons. And so maybe hearing those and then saying what are some alternatives to those, or perhaps again, the hybrid remote piece where you can say, okay, let's do our team meetings in person or whatever collaboration work we do in person, and then maybe the rest of the time we can work from home. I think the biggest challenge at the end of the day, something that I always say, I did mention it in this presentation, is that working from home is fundamentally a different way of working in the office. And when we talk about productivity, often the way we measure productivity or is that we see it. So we see someone talking to someone on the phone, we see someone in a meeting, and that's how we know like, okay, they're working. We don't really see that in remote work. And again, it goes back to this notion of like the lack of face-to-face interaction reduces trust. And that's why when we're talking about, oh, I don't know if the team is productive at home and there's questions around that, it's because we can't physically see them do their work. And I think that that's worth a conversation of some kind to see how can we still enable productive work while working from home. So these are some of the things I think from an employer perspective might be reasons why to go back to the office full time, but things that maybe you can ask for in response to that, and some reasons that hopefully will help you in getting more work from home time.
Excellent. Yes. Okay, and I've got our last question here, and we can let everyone go a little bit early, hopefully. So the last question is actually about the Smart Commute tool that we've spoken about. And the question is the Smart Commute tool free for anyone to use?
Yes, so it is free. You can sign up for an account. It'll ask you a series of questions. And you can use that to find carpool partners. But we also mentioned the tracking of your commutes, so across any mode. I know it also integrates into other apps, so you might be using other apps to be tracking your runs or whatnot. So you can integrate those into it as well. And then if you are a member of the Smart Commute program, and we really encourage you to sign up, then there are particular services and support that we provide that is specific to your workplace that the team will be able to work with you to develop. So at the end of the day, you can join regardless, and that helps you find carpool partners and other people in the network that you can connect with.
Awesome. Yeah, and one other thing I'll add, and a feature that I just find kind of interesting, is that it also tracks your emissions for your commutes and other trips, so you can see exactly how much a certain trip may or may not be emitting or saving you um, for the week or month, however you want to track it. So yeah, it's a great tool. Check it out, and yeah, it's free to use. Excellent. So I think that wraps things up for us. Dorinda, thank you so much for taking the time to give us this lovely presentation and answer these questions for us. Again, we mentioned the webinar has been recorded and will be posted on the Live Green Toronto YouTube account. We'll also be circulating a link so that you can view this later on. And with that, we can wrap it up and bid everyone a great afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.